Okay, so you're thinking about buying a psychographic segmentation. You've looked at a number of these and you're not quite sure what the differences are. In this video, I'm going to walk you through a complete buyer's guide for psychographic segmentation. At the end of it, you're probably going to know more than the salespeople on how these things are developed and how to use them. I'm going to walk you through the 4 key differences to look for in a psychographic segmentation and the 3 main use cases for psychographic segmentation. At the end, you're going to have a 20-point checklist for questions to ask as it relates to find the best psychographic segmentation for your specific use case. So let's start with an introduction on what these psychographic segmentations are. These have been pretty interesting. They've been around since the 1970s, and there is a very specific reason why retailers in particular like these. It's because not only can you use a psychographic segmentation to classify your customers, they also have a unique component in that they are geographically related. So when you find your best customer segments, you can also apply them to a map. So we'll also talk about how these are developed. So psychographic segmentations are developed using a k-means segmentation. They've been developed using the same method since the 1970s, where they're essentially looking at a neighborhood and then using k-means to group similar demographic neighborhoods. And then once you have that classification, usually it's about 60 to up to 100 clusters of different groups of people or segments. They will use survey data to apply to those segments to see what those people might do. And they'll typically have names like ultra wealthy families or laptops and lattes that kind of describe the segment. And usually these survey data will help you understand, okay, laptops and lattes, how likely are they to be interested in using computer devices, etc. So this is a little bit of history on psychographic segmentation. It's pretty fascinating. So these psychographic segmentations were developed by 2 men in the 1970s, unbeknownst to each other: Richard Weber in the UK and Jonathan Robin in the United States. So Jonathan Robin developed the Prism segmentation, which still exists today. Richard Weber developed the Acorn segmentation. Then he went on to develop the Mosaic segmentation, which still exists today. They happened at the same time because the 1970s is the first time the UK and the US had census tabulated demographics on the computer. So they were computerized and they were able to work with that data, and they started, for different reasons, clustering these groups of people to be able to describe areas. Okay, so let's talk about the 4 main differences that you need to ask for as it relates to a psychographic segmentation. Number 1, granularity, household versus neighborhood. So 1970s psychographic segmentations were only developed on the neighborhood, which they will cluster everybody in that neighborhood based on the census data, and this is usually at the census block group, into one singular cluster. The theory here is birds of a feather flock together, which is mostly true. But there's also household level segmentations, one being Experian Mosaic, another being Spatial's Personalized segmentation. And these are developed a little bit differently. They use individual variables at the address and in individual levels. So it'll literally be a first name and last name, a postal address, and the demographics on those people. A neighborhood segmentation will cluster everybody the same. An individual household segmentation, you may have different segments even on the same street. Neighborhood level segmentation is totally fine if you're doing some sort of trade area analysis, but if you want to understand more about an individual customer record, or if you want to do targeting, a household segmentation is going to be better for that specific use case. Okay, difference number 2 is the philosophy used to design the segmentation. And this ranges from a behavioral type segmentation to a demographic segmentation. Most segmentation systems use demographic data to classify people, but there are also some segmentations, Personalized being one of those segmentations, that will use people's behavior to define people. In Personalized in particular, it's using their social media, their retail visitation, and then finally their demographic traits to classify. If there are emotional reasons why someone would choose your brand, then you might want to consider a behavioral segmentation. If you're a brand like Walmart or you're dealing in commodities, probably a demographic segmentation is going to be good enough for your use case. Difference number 3 is velocity, live versus static. So if they're primarily using survey data to apply to those segmentations, then you're going to get an update once every year on how that survey data changes. And those questions will also be updated once every year. However, if you're using live data like retail visitation based on mobile phones or social media data, you're going to see emerging changes happen on what people are saying and what people are doing. And that allows you to capture those trends or strike while the iron is hot. Okay, and then finally, this is probably the most important, is the delivery of the psychographic segmentation. Unless you have a team of data scientists internally or analysts, most psychographic segmentations, even from the beginning, have been handled by a consultant. So you will work with a consultant, you'll share your customer data, you'll share your mobile data, and they will come back to you. They'll say, here are your segments. They have some expertise in these areas. Recently, there's been some platforms that have been developed that these are self-serve. You don't need to talk to a consultant to activate a marketing campaign for you. You can just upload the data or your customer data or your mobile data, classify those segments, and then actually port out campaigns directly from the platforms. So depending on what you want to do, whether you want to outsource your growth or you want to keep some of that internally, you can use platforms. You don't need data scientists. You can use a platform or not a consultant to activate the results of your psychographic segmentation. So checklist here, 5 points to ask as it relates to the key differences in segmentation. 1, is this segmentation at a household or a neighborhood level? 2, what are the variables used to classify neighborhoods or households? And do any of those variables include their behavior, or are they purely demographic variables? Question number 3, how frequently are these insights updated? If it's with live data, they may be updated every week. If it's survey data, it's probably going to be updated once a year. Question number 4, are these segment insights survey or behavior based? We just talked a little bit about that. Is it using actual surveys to see what people might do, or is it using their behavior to look at what they actually do? And the last question, is there a self-service tool to activate the segmentation, or do I need to talk to a consultant to get my results back on the segmentation? If there's a self-service tool, you can speed up the process considerably. Okay. So those are the 4 main differences in psychographic segmentations. Now, this is probably the most important for your retail brand specifically, is the use cases. There are 3 primary ways to grow a retail brand, and within all 3 of those, there are 5 use cases for segmentations that are within that. The 3 primary ways of growing a retail brand is: 1, you could open up new locations; 2, you could acquire more customers for those current locations; 3, you can retain or get repeat of your current customers. So we'll walk through how to use psychographic segmentation, 5 use cases for all 3 of those. As I'm going through those, take note of the ones that feel most relevant to the strategy of your brand, and we'll talk about what is the most important thing for psychographic segmentation for accomplishing each 5 of those use cases within those 3 growth levers. Okay, so let's start with number 1, is growing retail locations. So psychographic segmentation can be really helpful in mapping out where are your best customers, but the most critical piece of these, everybody is able to map them. The most critical piece is that you're able to find out who are your best customers really quickly and easily. There's 3 ways to do that. 1 is just looking at the trade area, so like a drive time. That's not the best way. The second way to do it, this is a little bit better, is looking at the mobile phone visits. So there's a number of different data providers: Placer.ai, Azira, Unicast, Advan Data. There's a number of these, and you can see who's actually physically visiting your location. So that's number 2. Number 3, this is the best. Not a lot of retailers actually have this data, but it's actually your customer purchase data. This is either coming from a point of sale system, or if it's coming from potentially your online, your Shopify data if you have an online store. And you can actually match that to segmentation. So you want to make sure that you're able to quickly match that data. And that is use case number 1, is quickly segmenting your mobile data or your customer data. So instead of working with the raw data and trying to match it to the segmentation, you need to be able to upload it quickly to a platform so you can get a quicker ranking of who are my best customer segments. Okay, the number 2 use case is identifying markets with your ideal customers. Once you have your ranked segmentation, the segmentation solution needs to be able to easily be mapped into some sort of mapping platform. So either they need to have a mapping platform internally that you can interact with, or it needs to integrate easily within Esri's ArcGIS, et cetera. And you want to be able to map trade areas where there are high numbers of people that fall into your ideal customer segment based on what you learn from your mobile data or your customer data. The number 3 use case here is surfacing trade area segment aggregations. So once you have your general market area where you want to open up a new store, you need to be able to compare 2 locations to see, do they have a sustainable amount of people in my ideal segment so that it will support my brand? And that is looking at total counts of households in that population that are in your target segment. So that should be really easy to do. And then finally, you need to be able to, well, not finally, but second to last here, you need to be able to compare your locations. Not only your locations, people also like to be able to compare their locations versus their competition. So does the software, does the platform allow you to see who your customer segment is and who your competition's customer segment is? And then can you see the top 25% of your performers and the bottom 25%? If you can see that very easily, you can look at the segments that are driving the top 25% of your stores and go find more of those segments. Okay, and then finally, use case number 5 here, and this is if you're at a higher level of sophistication or you have enough locations to be able to do this, is enhancing predictive or cannibalization models. If you're using a demographics only type segmentation, there's a chance that these aren't going to bump the models very much because probably your models are already demographics based and they're capturing those demographic variables. You don't want to double count those. If there's behavioral component to your segmentation, then there potentially could be some lift in that predictive model and also the cannibalization model. So you can see for 2 of your stores where there's an overlap in trade area, are you losing customers that are really important to the brand, or are they not really your customer segment anyways? So the 5-point checklist here. 1, does this segmentation is it able to segment mobile foot traffic data quickly? 2, how is the customer data mapping accomplished? Does it happen in platform or does it happen out of platform? Is it very easy to do that? 3, are the segments easily mapped? 4, can the results vary by region? I didn't really talk about this, but some segmentations have enough data so they can say, this is how people behave in Ohio, or this is how people behave in Columbus. If you're using surveys only, you can only get a national version of this. And then last, do you have any results on its predictive power? So those are your 5-point checklist. Okay, so let's talk about the second growth lever for psychographic segmentations, and that is growing new customer acquisition. So if you're doing any type of paid media, digital ads, this is going to be really important for you. This could look like you're using AdWords, display advertising, social media advertising, direct mail, etc. So there's 5 ways that psychographic segmentation can assist in that use case. And there are a few things that you'll want to make sure that your psychographic segmentation provider has for those 5. So number 1 is, does this help me determine quickly who are my most likely and my most valuable customers? This is similar to being able to upload customer data into the platform and immediately get a ranked segmentation. So those are the most likely. It should give you an index based on how likely those people are to buy, which the math there is the percentage that bought from you versus the percentage that are available in the trade area. You will get an index on that. The second thing that you need is to know is how valuable are those customers. And if you have customer lifetime value, you might find some segments are spending 20, 30, 40% more on your brand than the average segment. That's really important to know because then you understand the size of price and you also know how much you're willing to pay on cost per click on that particular segment. And that can be really powerful information as it relates to digital advertising. Okay. Second is you need to make sure that it's able to target audiences directly. Some segmentation platforms, especially if they're a neighborhood segmentation, there's no way to attach them to an individual identifier digitally. And so you can't directly target a segment that you know is a valuable segment for you. So you need to ask, is there a direct tie-in to Facebook? Is there a direct tie-in to the trade desk for programmatic advertising? Otherwise, you're just going to be using the segments for inspiration on demographically who to target, not targeting those exact segments directly. Okay, number 3 is making sure your segmentation inspires the right relevant offers, creative, and copy. Some people will use segmentation purely to identify the right audiences to target. You're going to get a little bit better results there, but the real power is if the actual segment inspires what you have. So if you're trying to target boomers, if you show a boomer on the image, you're going to get a higher click-through rate. If you're trying to target young professionals, you would want to show a young professional the same thing that you show boomers. And this is actually what makes it really powerful, especially on social media platforms, is you're connecting the right offer to the right audience. And the social media platforms in particular are all about engagements to increase your chances of reaching the right audiences using that native machine learning algorithm. Okay, and then number 4 is reveal the best channels to target. Does your segmentation show you what podcasts these people are paying attention to? Does your segmentation platform show you, are they using Facebook? Are they using Twitter or now X? Should we target these particular people through direct mail, for example? You need to be able to see where you should allocate the budget in your dollar. And then lastly, does your segmentation clearly show you which of your audiences are reacting to which of those campaigns? It needs to be able to report the results. So some questions that you can ask your segmentation provider here is, one, can it easily rank and show me the LTV of my top customers? Lifetime value, how valuable they are. 2, can it show me how many of those customers are available in the market? That is total size of prize. 3, is there a direct platform integration here with Meta, Google, etc., or are these just sort of inspirational segments? 4, does it help me choose the ideal channel to target them? 5, does it help me inspire relevant results, creative and copy? And then 6, can I easily measure the results of my segmentation? Okay, so that is it for acquiring new customers. We'll go on to number 3 growth lever, which is growing repeat customers and retention. So there's a number of statistics that show getting a repeat customer is a lot easier than acquiring a new customer. And this strategy is particularly relevant if your brand has a huge customer base already. Then you can really, there's a lot more market to play with if you have a huge customer base. So the 5 different use cases within this, one is personalized email marketing. If you have a lot of emails on file, you should be able to attach your segments to those emails very quickly so that you can split up the personalization within those emails. We have a use case, for example, that AAA was able to split a insurance email up 3 different ways with a control group, did a little bit of changing on the imagery of the segments and the copy, and they got a 14% higher click-through rate and a 50% higher conversion rate on insurance. And that's just what happens when you actually reach people with the right personalized message. Okay, so the second thing is making personalized product recommendations. If you're able to upload your customer data and include some product purchase information in that, you should be able to see by segment what types of products those people are more likely to buy. If you're an outdoor brand, is a particular segment more likely to buy your fishing line? Is a particular segment more likely to buy your kids line? And this can be really important when you want to do a reactivation email. If a older group is buying your fishing line and a younger group is buying your kids lines, then you should probably to reactivate them, share the most relevant product with them. Okay, so third is demographic enrichment. Some psychographic segmentation providers will also share with you the demographics on your first party data like age, income, marital status, etc. And this is really helpful if you're trying to make a gender or age specific offer. Think Father's Day, think Mother's Day. Okay, fourth is email enrichment. Some companies, especially restaurants, won't actually have the emails of their first party data, maybe if it's coming from a point of sale transaction data. But if you own that first party data, some segmentation systems will allow you to match the customer data that you have to an opted in email so that you can begin emailing customers that you don't have any of that data on. And then lastly is enhance loyalty programs. And that helps you group your customer loyalty based on different socioeconomic factors. There's one example that I really like of a makeup brand that they discovered a huge portion of their loyalty group was a Hispanic segment, and that Hispanic segment was churning rapidly. And the reason that is because there was a previous executive that did a really big push into the Hispanic segment, and then it was ignored after that, but they were able to identify that problem using that. Okay, so the 5 questions that you can ask here. One is, can I enrich my customer data and loyalty records with demographic information? The second thing you might want to ask, if you have a lot of records, does this have an API solution for bulk records? Third is, does this also include demographic enrichment? Can I get age, income, marital status, et cetera on this? Fourth is, can I add email enrichment to this? Can I get emails on my first party data? And fifth, can I see product sales by segment so I can offer the right next product to my customers? Okay, so those are the 3 big use cases. Within that, you'll probably have heard a few that resonated with you. Now, let's talk about the launch of your psychographic segmentation and how to do that right. We've seen hundreds of launches of these psychographic segmentations, so there's a few steps that you can do to make sure that this goes really well for you. So, number 1, you want to choose your best use cases, and it's nice to have a few stories for your executive teams to say, hey, this is a specific use case that I see for our brand. Here's the unique thing about our brand that I think this use case is going to make the most sense. Second is, once you use that psychographic segmentation, the first thing you want to do is upload your customer data, your mobile data, and rank those segments. And you should already have some pretty eye-opening moments about insights of your segments that maybe your executives have never seen, based on what you just learned about your segmentation. And that can create a lot of energy. And that kind of brings us to step number 3, which is get internal buy-in during the launch. So you want to have a moment when you are revealing your core customer. And I've seen some really creative ways of doing this, anything from just getting everybody together and revealing insights, but I've also seen people have like a Jeopardy questionnaire where people are guessing at their best customer segments, and there's this reveal like, okay, actually our customer segments that spend the most, or this customer segment, here's why. That gets people excited. It gets everybody focusing in the right direction. Step 4 is you want to execute one of those 15 repeatable use cases per quarter. I say repeatable because doesn't make any sense to do a lot of work and do it once. You want to make sure that it's repeatable. You want to do 1 per quarter. And then 5, you want to evaluate the results. And by the way, it should be really easy to evaluate the results of your segments. Okay. And that's it. So we just walked through what are the primary use cases for segmentation, what are the primary 4 differences, and how segmentation systems are constructed and delivered. And we walk through the 5 points for launching a powerful psychographic segmentation. Really, the power of a psychographic segmentation is you're matching the right offers to the right audience, whether that means you're physically placing a location around the right audience or you're getting the right ad to the right audience that's personalized for them. But internally, what it does for the team is it gets everybody's energy focused in the right direction so that you are making sure all of your energy is focused on the right customer. It's focused on the right channels, and it's focused on making the right messages. And ultimately, when it comes to marketing, especially, it's all about the energy that's going on in your team. And if all the energy is going in the right direction, you're going to make a campaign that does really well and connects with your audience with no waste. So that is it. Thank you for hanging with me, and I hope you have enjoyed this. If you have any comments, go ahead and leave them below, and I will see you on the other side.